Testing. Trying out YouTube Live, because why not? All right. How's the video? Can you see my face? All right. I'm having someone verify. Anyway, I got one of my random packages from China. You can also come here and just look at the screen. I'm starting to unbox it. I figured might as well try YouTube Live and see what it's like. So what I'm doing is actually making a little pie cluster. You can see the photo of it from Glorious AliExpress. And it's just a stack up of acrylic pieces, some hardware, and some people use it for cluster computing or for mining. I'm just taking all the old, really old Raspberry Pis I have lying around and doing interesting things, hopefully, on my home network and doing it in a clean way. I got 4 here. You can see they're all using standard SD cards, which were quite iconic. This is my first Raspberry Pi ever, and it's got this, the plastic broke, so my dad shimmed a piece of plastic on top of it. Anyway, put those aside for now. I'm trying to assemble this thing with the 4 Pis I have. It's meant for 5, but I don't know. Laser cut acrylic. There's these spacers that I'm not quite sure what to do with. The photos are not super clear. And standoffs and washers and threads. Anyway, I'm going to start peeling off some of this paper. If you look at the listing, the instructions are very, very explicit. Let's see. Tear up protective film. I'm going to go tear up some film. I don't know. If you're like me, ripping off the film on a LCD screen is quite satisfying. It's a little bit harder on acrylic. I've seen a lot of techniques on the internet of how to optimize pulling off the paper film. I have not been able to use any of them. I just do the old-fashioned way, slightly longer nails, and actually my tweezers I use for SMD are really good for getting under the acrylic paper. Who knows? It's quite tedious. I'm actually really concerned how I'm going to get the spacers off. I don't know if you can see this, but these spacers are, I don't know, M2.5 spacers, and they have paper on them. Yeah, that's going to be very tedious. In the meantime, I will just keep on peeling away. So what's really interesting about acrylic, when you laser cut it, the paper lining is supposed to prevent scratching, and a little bit of the charring happens on the paper as opposed to the acrylic, which is great. You know, you have clean product. You can see this, the top board. Still a little piece of paper there. Didn't get everything. No big deal. Completely transparent. But gosh, is it a pain in the ass to get the paper off. There's a there's a laser cutter, very, very famous Kickstarter, the Glowforge. We actually have those at work. We have one at work. And it uses a similar technique, except instead of this, I don't know, adhered paper, which appears to not really have much of an adhesive of any kind, they use masking tape, which is way, way better. Very clean, easy to peel off, and chars very nicely, but doesn't have that same, like, gross, uneven ripping problem. And here's where the tweezers come into play. Nice and easily grabs the edge, and layer 2. So before going too far, I'm going to just try to assemble the top layer. I don't know, because why not? This one. So it's got the very interesting Raspberry Pi logo cut out of it. Maybe for airflow, but I think really just because, why not? They have these, I don't know what you call these nuts, but they have a dome top, usually for surface finish. There's no real reason besides aesthetics, as far as I can tell. But you go ahead and you thread it through. All right, easy, easy peasy. Take the next one, thread it through. I'm actually trying to see how tall this is going to be because I don't even know where I'm going to put this in the house. I also haven't talked to my housemate about where I'm going to put this in the house. She's smiling in the corner. But I think it's going to be pretty small because I was looking at getting like a home server solution to do a bunch of different fun projects, like a little mini web server and a VPN and Pi-hole, which is an ad blocker. But to get a computer that performs really well would require buying a bunch of stuff off eBay or spending too much money that I don't really feel like spending, or just have a Raspberry Pi do each one of those individual services. Yeah, that's not too bad, right? Stack that up. It won't take too much space. Each one of these take 2 amps. I got one of these multi-port USB chargers, right? Easily handles 5. This is actually a 10-port. I have another 6-port back in the back room to charge the whole thing. Ethernet, that's going to be the interesting part of this problem. Because these are Raspberry Pi 8s. They just call them Raspberry Pis because there was no other version at the time, being the original version. Are these all original Raspberry Pis? Let's see, Raspberry Pi 2011-12, December 2011, and this is maybe even older. That's why it broke off. I think this is the very first, and this is probably a Rev. I may have one more somewhere. Only Ethernet. So by only having Ethernet, I have to figure out some sort of switching solution. I do have Ethernet switches lying somewhere. So probably do an Ethernet switch plus one of these USB cell phone charger thingies and have my little Pi cluster. In the meantime, I will carry on and go to the next layer. You know, these old Pis, I haven't really found a good use of them. Certainly they're running very old chipset. These, I guess the first ones were made in 2011. Oh, this is fascinating. I just realized something. The original Pis have different mounting holes. These are not going to mount onto these plates. They're too old. You probably can't see that. The original Pis only had 2 holes, one over here, one over here, where every Pi after that had nicely, evenly spaced 2.5 millimeter holes on the edges. Well, that's cool. All right. Figure that one out later. Oh, this is even better. That one Pi, the one that is even older, has no mounting holes. All right. Deal with that problem in a bit. In the meantime, I'm going to continue peeling off my acrylic paper. This is fun. You know, enclosures and mounting is actually a huge engineering problem. When it comes to you know, designing your electronics, sure, you could spend a lot of time and effort. Maybe you hire a firm that says, all right, this is the thing I want. Here's my widget. my processor, my sensor board, whatever. And that's the easy part. Most product creators who build systems or products that are electronic, most of the time it's spent on the mechanicals, the enclosure, modifying the electronics to fit in a particular dimension, or if it's battery powered, how to make sure you have big enough battery that's light enough and small enough. So just figuring out how to mount stuff is a huge technical problem, which is why I just was browsing on AliExpress and saw some random listing for these little Pi cluster standoff things. I was like, oh, that's a clever and simple idea. It's pretty cheap. I could have easily designed something that was, I don't know, 3D printable and done the same thing. Probably to support these old Raspberry Pis, which I didn't realize have different mounting holes. But it is, I would say, mounting in enclosures is, I don't know, 40 to 50% of every product design. And so any way you can short circuit that, you're better off. You'll see a lot of finished products, air quotes, use off-the-shelf enclosures and mounting systems, and maybe they'll skin it. There's companies who just sell enclosures that are meant to be white labeled. There's a really good company called Takachi. A lot of companies, you'll see their product and it's got their logo and maybe it's got a custom cutouts for all their connectors and things like that, but it's just a Takachi case, and 90% of the enclosure was pre-designed, and just where the cutouts are from a sub module. Similarly for like mounting stuff, when it comes to computers, there are standards around mounting in racks, and your standard server has a, I don't know where it came from, but there was a de facto standard for rack mounting. There's a U, a 1U, a 1 unit. So a double-sized server is a 2U. So this is kind of like an RU, a Raspberry Pi unit. And there have been recently a lot of the cloud providers have got together and created their own standards. So there is a open data center standard around racks and how to power these things and how to space these, and kind of rising tide model to sort of mounting and sort of where do you put computers and how do you store them efficiently and how do you lay out all the cabling. Even the motherboards are becoming standardized because of the efficiencies you get even among competitors to have a consistent way to put all these things together. I think this might be my last one for now because I'm getting pretty bored peeling these papers off. It is not fun, and it's not getting me anywhere because I still have to figure out how to mount these really old Raspberry Pis. But it's good enough to get the sense of how these mounting kits work. They do have nicer ones, fancier ones that include power systems. You think of your computer, your typical computer case, and they're meant for Raspberry Pis, and they have cooling fans, and they have mini power systems. They're quite adorable. These things can run off of the more modern Raspberry Pis need up to about 2.1 amps, which is the same power draw as a tablet charging brick, but they have different requirements. So if you're using it for gaming or I don't know, mining, you would need spikes in current. So they even have higher spike, efficient high spike power supplies. Whatever. They have fancier cases. This is literally just plastic and some off-the-shelf mounting hardware, but it's pretty convenient. Yeah. See, the problem with this paper is While it does come off generally cleanly, there's little bits that stay around. I don't know if you can see, this little piece of paper over here, right? I can go ahead and pick at it with my tweezers to make it clean. It doesn't actually affect its ability to be assembled, but now I have a few different pieces, right? Looking back at this photo, I don't know if you can still see it, but top layer, this is room for of a different style, USB, and let's go ahead. I mean, I think it's literally just pass this through thread to get that that component there. Probably disassemble this once I figure out. These pies, they're not very delicate. I do wish I would have thought through and realized the mounting holes for these older devices, but I can just put some non-conductive double-sided tape and lay it down. They're not going anywhere, and these were just sitting in a drawer, so it's not like I'm worried about ruining them. It's kind of a shame about the extra hardware. I can keep those and use them elsewhere, but in the meantime, I can just keep on threading these little guys. These brass standoffs are extremely cheap. It turns out that they sell these in humongous quantity, which is fine if you have acrylic on acrylic. It's actually a nice feature if you there's a bunch of test boards and other electronics that come out of China. They use these brass standoffs as actually power rails. So you'll see like ground and power. So that's even convenient. But if you are really nervous around of having these connections, there's nylon versions of this. Those are extremely expensive. 4 times the price of the brass alternative, especially with when it comes to more standard sizes. So if you're building a board and you just don't want it to crush down on your PCB because it's very thin, if it's a thin PCB, really your only option is to go with one of the nylon, but surprisingly more expensive. I guess this is also used for things like this, which are not PCBs, and that is not an issue. Now I'm looking at this photo. I'm trying to figure out what the bottom layer is. I guess it's just a screw. There's no clear photo. Well, let's see what happens when I try to thread one of these. I don't know. What do they say? Raspberry Pi screws. I don't think it's that specific. Oh yeah, that's easy. Oh, I don't have a screwdriver here. I will get my handy screwdriver. I'll be right back. One second. Admire my Raspberry Pi. So, let's see. Get this back on. My go-to screwdriver is this for small projects. My dad got these for free, but they're just great. They're like for the pocket protector generation, and they're just really handy to have around. I don't think you can buy these anymore. But if we place these in, that's cool. I guess these are pretty deep threaded. That does not work. Well, that's fun. I guess the threading on the standoffs are different than the threading on the nuts. Let's see. Well, let's try this out. Yeah, I'm going to guess this is a M2.5 because I know at least the more modern Raspberry Pis use an M2.5. Yeah, that's about right. But I have no idea how I'm supposed to mount the bottom to the acrylic. That's weird. Let's keep looking at this limited set of instructions. All the screws are about the same. Anything? Here's one interesting bit. There are 4 short standoffs. That's it. So I'm guessing these 4 go here. Yeah. They're the same size as the standoffs themselves. So that's the bottom. Cool. We got this going. So this is, here we go. It's roughly where they would fit. I do have one more here, right? The other thing is I have to find at least 4 GB full-size SD cards. I don't have a whole lot of those floating around. It just so happens I do have a 256 megabyte SD card, which, well, could fit Linux, but not Raspbian or Ubuntu. For the rest of this, you know, I'm going to imagine it's something like yeah, probably something along the lines of screw to the bottom. Yeah, I'll take a board that's not already peeled off. To the bottom, the acrylic standoff. The board, just for demonstration purposes, and the nut on top. That's what it looks like from these photos. Yep. Well, that's kind of as far as I'm going to go tonight. I'll peel off the rest of these layers and very, very inconvenient standoffs and see if I can either acquire more modern Raspberry Pis that can cleanly be mounted, or just take some double-sided tape. I like the sort of spongy 3M tape. Sometimes it's called carpet tape. I'm not quite sure if that's the right term. And just lay it down. Especially what I have planned for this low traffic. Like I mentioned, I think it'd be fun to have a VPN, a Pi-hole server, maybe a very basic file server, and who knows? I got at least 4 Raspberry Pis that are sitting idle. If you have any ideas, let me know. Leave them in the comments. And yeah, this has been an experiment for me, not just building this project, but trying YouTube Live. So if you have any feedback, audio, lighting, format, let me know in the comments below. All right. talk to you guys later. Cheers. The real question is,